primatologist Winthrop Kellogg. Despite this setback, he was determined to prove that nurture was the dominant influence in child development.
Kellogg knew that the perfect way to prove his theory was to engineer a feral child, to get a baby, put them among wolves, and to see what happened. Clearly, this is the one experiment he couldn't do. This was the forbidden experiment. So what he decided to do was the next best thing, which was to reverse that forbidden experiment and to bring an ape into a human family.
For the next year, the chimpanzee, Gua, would spend every day with Kellogg's young son, Donald. As Kellogg had predicted, Gua could learn many human characteristics. But the experiment had unforeseen consequences.
Kellogg really thought of this as an experiment on the chimpanzee. In actual fact, it became equally an experiment on his son, particularly in the way in which the son was picking up or not picking up language.
Rather than learning words, Donald was learning the barks and yelps of a chimpanzee. Horrified, Kellogg called off the experiment. Almost by accident, Kellogg had shown the vulnerability of early childhood, how the smallest changes in environment can have unforeseen and long-lasting effects. It was a subject that continued to intrigue scientists. In the 1960s, American psychologist Harry Harlow continued where Kellogg had left off.
Harlow's work was really seminal in this entire field because he showed the crucial importance of the caregiving relationship between a mother and an infant, and how the physical stimulation, literally the physical contact with the caregiver, has profound impact on healthy development.
At birth, Harlow took baby monkeys from their mothers. They were then given a choice between a cold wire monkey with milk or a soft, warm monkey without. Amazingly, they chose the more comforting figure every time. And socially, the effects were devastating. Raised in isolation, without any love or encouragement, these young monkeys were scared and confused. Harlow couldn't explain it, but something about this early isolation had damaged them for life. But these were monkeys. Would the same be true for a human child? It would be another 20 years before scientists had a chance to find out. And when they did, it would be in the busiest, most urban setting imaginable.
Officials in the Los Angeles suburb of Arcadia have taken custody of a 13-year-old girl, and they say was kept in such isolation by her parents that she never even learned to talk. The girl still wore diapers and was uttering infantile noises when a social worker discovered the case 2 weeks ago. But the authorities are hoping she still may have a normal learning capacity.
Among the first to see the child was Temple City Detective Sergeant Frank Lindley.
I already knew that the child was 13 and a half years old. And I took one look at her, and she wasn't much bigger than my daughter Beverly, who had just turned 7 about 3 months earlier. And I really had a hard time conceiving of the idea that the child was the age that she was. The child obviously had been severely mistreated. After she was still in diapers, couldn't walk. She had no verbal skills at all at that point. The last time I was on this street was probably 30 years ago. Yep, there it is. Hasn't changed much. The backyard looks the same. It's all weeds and dead grass. Looks the same as it did in 1970.
The house belonged to Clark Wiley. A loner, Clark had turned his back on the world after his mother had been killed in a hit-and-run accident. After the accident, things in the Wiley house would never be the same again.
The house was completely dark. All the blinds were drawn. And there were no toys, no clothes, nothing that would ever indicate to you that a child of any age lived there. The child's bedroom was back in this corner. That was the bedroom. The windows were covered to about 3 inches from the top. which was the only natural light that had ever come in there, and all the time the child was in the bedroom. The entire furnishings of the bedroom consisted of a cage with a pull-down chicken wire lid and some type of piece of wire securing it when they closed it down. There was a potty chair with some kind of homemade strapping device.
For 13 years, Jeannie had spent her nights locked in bed, her days strapped to a potty chair. During that time, Clark had ordered his son John and wife Irene never to talk to her. In her darkened room, she had led a life of near total isolation. Even close neighbors were completely unaware of her presence.
We came home from work and the police was here and they came to question us. That's when we found out, you know, what happened and, you know, that they had a little girl. Nobody knew before. And when we found out what happened and how she was treated, I mean, everybody was shocked and just unbelievable.
For their whole marriage, Clark had imposed his will on Irene. And blind with cataracts, she had been too scared to resist. But one day, something broke. While Clark was out buying groceries, she seized her chance and fled. It was the first glimpse the world would have of Clark and Irene's dark secret.
I met Clark and Irene at Temple City Sheriff's Station. They were both under arrest at the time. When we interviewed Irene, she would make no mention of the family whatsoever, particularly the children. I attempted, along with my partner, to interview Clark. He refused to talk to us. He wouldn't say a word. He never even acknowledged that he understood what we were talking about.
Unable to face the truth, Clark took matters into his own hands.
This morning, the authorities reported that 70-year-old Clark Wiley shot and killed himself just before he was to go to court and be arraigned for child abuse.
After 13 years, Jeannie was at last free. And for scientists, she was just the case they had been waiting for.